Hello, everybody. For those who join us now, my name is Ingemar Vollenweider. I'm an architect and professor for urban design at the TU Dortmund and co-host of the Dortmund Architecture Days 2020. I'm very happy to welcome now two young, still young, and fascinating architects with a really compelling approach towards architecture and our times, I think, and even more important, with really strong projects. First of all, I will introduce you. If I may, I'll be very short because you should start speaking as soon as possible yourself. Gilles Delalex is a French architect. He studied architecture in Grenoble and Montreal, and he is co-founder and partner of Studio Muoto, based in Paris. Muoto is Finnish, and now I hear, okay, can you still hear me? He's currently a professor at the School of Paris-Malaquais, where he heads the department Theory, History, and Project. I think this is a really great title. Maybe we come back to that. And then we have Jan de Vylder. He's a Belgian architect, partner and co-founder of Architecten Jan de Vylder Ingewink, which is based in Ghent. He currently is professor for architecture and design at the ETH in Zurich. Welcome, you both. Great to have you here.
Pleasure. Hi.
Redefining modernism could be a central topic, of our talk. And I hope it's not just me talking to you, but maybe we even succeed in that you talk to each other. We'll see. Redefining modernism, is that true for both of you? We heard the term several times today already. Postmodernism is coming back with Kaschka, Knapkiewicz, and Axel Fickert. Redefining modernism. Which reality, if we speak about fiction and realism, which reality forms the base of your work, and which fiction? Which stories are told? Science fiction or fictional architecture? But first, I ask both of you to give a short introduction to your work and attitude, and we didn't plan that. I just go by the alphabet. Gilles, please, could you start? And
sure.
You share the screen?
Yeah, I can share. I brought some images. Fiction or reality? I guess probably fiction is certainly part of reality, I would say. Where it is made of stories and also history. The question of renewing modernity, I think, was a topic for us because Yves Moreau, my partner, and I, we started working together around 2003. And this was a moment, maybe mostly in social sciences, a bit in architecture as well, where there was that idea, that theory that we were entering a new stage of modernity. It was called the second modernity or late modernity, and it was supposed to be smarter and more reflexive than the previous one. So, we were simply reading all those theories, and basically they were saying, there were different narratives inside, and most of them were saying basically we can resurrect modernity, we can start it again, like an old rusty machine, or maybe we could compare it to a sleeping beauty that could just awaken. So we were quite interested and exciting about those theories, and we were wondering how we could fit in, or or refuse it, or how we could mm, reflect. I think the interesting thing about this theories was that modernity was more or less taken or conceived as a quite unfinished thing. You know, basically they were saying if we can start it again means that it's not over. It's not like a absolute period. It's more complex than this. You know, you have history is made of continuities of big moments and it's made of breaks, and then things can start again. You know, and then there's a new chapter, and how can we relate to that new chapter? And of course, it was probably a moment of crisis for us because it was a question, crisis about feeling that we got to the end of something, and we don't know what's coming after. So it's quite moments. Such moments of crisis are quite moments of anxiety. They're quite scary because you don't know what is going to follow. You don't know what is the new period that is starting. And we thought that the fact to start our job in a moment of such a moment of doubts was maybe interesting because books of history, they usually tell you the large periods of time, but I think maybe they don't document that much the moments in between, where you don't know where you are, and yet they're probably the most interesting moments, because that's where things are being invented and imagined. So we thought that in these moments of crisis, probably we tend to question ourselves about origins, about where we come from. Since we don't know what's coming after, then we look back or just we look elsewhere, maybe in science fiction, for instance, and then there are moments, there may be more introspective moments, because you think, okay, where are we coming from? So we came up with this idea that we added a small narrative as well. We said, okay, maybe we are getting into a kind of archaic modernity. No, archaic not in a sense of old, but in a sense of quest of origins.
And interrupt you shortly. Is it possible that there is a talk in the background?
Can I yeah, there's a meeting.
It's difficult to hear you.
Okay.
But you cannot stop them.
I don't know. I can try to speak louder.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So
our response, what we proposed, but wasn't like we didn't decide at the beginning. It's also our own narrative, so we built it up quite recently, I would say. We thought, how do we answer to that moment, that strange modernity that is archaic, that is questioning itself? And we thought maybe it's an architecture that assumes a certain incompleteness, that is not totally finished as well. And that we thought maybe it's an architecture that is in a state of becoming, and like a rune, but that is not you could start again. Imagine a building that is turning into a rune, but then its life is not going just down, going up and down. So we thought we had this idea of an architecture like that, which is slightly in between construction and deconstruction, or often there are buildings that are under construction and buildings that are being demolished. They often look the same. You have that structure that is prominent, but it's not meant to be seen. But then you can see it, and you see it as something very naked. And I think one of the closest thing we found was probably these pictures that we often show. We like to show them. These are structures along Japanese roads, and this picture has been taken by Toshio Shibata, who's a Japanese photographer, and I think he spends his life taking pictures of these structures that are meant to stop the rocks, you know, from falling down to the road. And we always, once we found the book simply, and we were fascinated about the structures because they are very rough and very refined at the same time, and there's a tension because you don't really know if they are growing. You know, they could be like urban grids, no, they could be growing onto the mountains. They could be like romantic ruins as well. You know, they could be in a state of deconstruction. Maybe the water is rising here, and we thought that status, it's not exactly architecture, but the status of this construction was quite interesting because they were like adolescents, you know, they were like in the age of transition. You know, adolescents, they don't know whether they want to commit suicide or if they want to grow up. You know, they in between these two stages of destruction and construction. So that's pretty much the thread that we try to define, but lately, well, not so long ago, I would say, and that we maybe trying to pursue today as much as we can, because it's not always easy to tell a client that we want, you know, his or her building is going to be like a ruin. You know, it's not easy to sell an idea like that. So a series of projects where we've tried, you know, to follow a little bit that path. There was the Saclay building, which is our most known published building, and on the campus of Paris-Saclay. The particularity of the building is that you can play basketball on the roof, and half of the space inside is outside. Actually, there's only half of the total of the surface area that is actually built, and that came because the budget was very short. And we proposed to not build a few parts, and we said maybe, you know, on the first story, first level, we said we'll make it later. And we thought it was interesting to have some holes like this in the building that, you know, like wasteland, you know, things that is not built yet. And of course, it was a powerful gesture in terms of architecture. And we did a competition a little bit after that is quite in the same vein, because it's a kind of platform architecture, you know, where you fit different activities like a shelf that where you can, you know, climb from story to story with an open staircase. But this one was for housing and workshops. The idea with that Snow idea is pretty much the idea of the immeuble villa, basically, and everybody would build its own house inside. That's a little further from the idea. That's a housing building we did in Paris, with Stendhal, the northeast of Paris, and there that was actually our first public commission. It's almost 10 years old. And the idea was to work on that layer of balconies facing stars and working on a sort of a thick facade that would be appropriable and that would make the face of the building change over time. And the last building I put is a school we did in the north of Paris, north in Clichy. And I have to admit that we liked the building under construction a lot more than when it was finished. So, and we thought, oh well, the pictures we took during the construction stage were were much stronger. We thought if we could have kept it like this, it would have been nice. So I'm showing some pictures of when it was being built. The structure was the concrete was pretty well done according to French standards. And the last pictures I'm putting, I think they sort of relate to the cliché, are pictures of structures taken by Amélie Labourdette in Sicily and south of Italy. And they're beautiful pictures, of course. And I think they sort of illustrate what we mean by this idea of we call them joyful ruins. These ruins that are not in a state of destruction really, but they're sort of frozen, because these buildings, they all construction was interrupted. It was stopped, and I think you can feel that a little bit. They're not buildings that are falling down. They're not falling apart. They are growing, but their growth, their construction is sort of frozen. So that's pretty much the end of my talk.
Really, thanks a lot. Great pictures, and so I hope we can keep it in mind and keep it in the air for a moment. And I would like to ask Jan to show his short introduction. We are a little bit longer, so also to Jan, take your time. I think we have enough time to discuss, and I think it's good to follow your thoughts. Yeah, and so don't feel too much under pressure. Even Gilles already spent half the time. No, it's all okay.
I just want to prepare. Okay, here they are. I set them aside because as Gilles was talking about this or showing these beautiful images, I'd like to show him also some beautiful images he might be very interested in. Where do I start? Do I start with reflecting first on what might be the theme of the afternoon? Or do I start with reflecting what is the theme of the afternoon, or do I just constantly start to deny it? If you want to hear me saying something about modernity, I could say once another modernity. Not sure the last one. But maybe actually I don't have an idea. I tried to explain a few things throughout some work we made. As you know, the office today has another perception or another constitution, or at least there are two offices right now, the one of Vylder and the one that I run with Inge together. But at the end, of course, work is related to architect in the Vylder as it is also related to our new offices since now a little year. That it does not look good makes that it looks good is a title that was given to a pavilion, but that I also love to take as a general title, especially in those days almost. And the first project I just show you when it comes to an idea of modernity, I don't know, is a glazed house. And I now tell it like this because of the theme of the afternoon, a glazed house, which is reflecting to modernity, isn't it? Into an old house. A little bit the opposite to what modernity might do is getting to the outside, you could say, but here it's in the inside of the house. And of course, never ever there has been any reflection on modernity when we built this house, never at all. I mean, we were building a house to live in, but on the other hand, a lot of things that of course resemble or reminds or reflects on ideas of modernity, like the glazed facade, the productivity of the materials and the systems, of course, refer. So what you see here is a simple refurbishment of a house. It's like more than 10 years ago at this moment, I think. And it's a house that has been made to be self-built. This was one of the premises of the job, because for not 100,000 euros, organizing a house into a building that by renovation only already would cost like 10 times the price. Not 10 times, I exaggerate, but I mean, at least let's say, if you would do it in an ordinary or in a normal way, you would spend 500 and something like this. So we built themselves a house or an economy that was built or based on material economy rather than on production economy. That means that they could produce it themselves, which of course is valued zero. Well, valued very much because it's your own human interest, your own human energy, but I mean, you don't have to pay it. So what you see here is a small house within a smaller house, within a little bit taller house, I would say, in which everything has been constructed in the sense that productive ideas on one hand, but also artisanal, let's say personal way of realizing has been important. I think that last point might be not at all the idea of modernity, not at all the idea of how to produce space. But this is what it is at this point. And of course, it's not only about the reflection on how to make it, how we can possibly do, what can we do, but it's also related to ideas on simple things. We believe architecture is still important to light, shadow, life, air, view, perspective. Look at this. This is the way how the glazed house is embedded in the old house. And I could say a lot of things like, you know, nowadays sustainable thoughts like the space in between the original wall and the glazed wall is of course a good insulation shield, and then with a double glazed and so on, and you don't need and so on and so on. All what we like to hear today, but I don't think that sustainability in that sense, is the best thing that is brought to architecture today. If we could talk about sustainability of being the recap of what we have and no more, no less, then we are arriving in a more interesting talk about sustainabilities and so. But let's skip the sustainability for today. Anyway, some images. That's it. Second one I'd like to bring to the table, and the projects I bring to the table has to do with also feeling to me as an architect, the way we look to things, the way we move throughout time with projects. Good projects always become a little bit stones in your shoes while walking, you know. You want to keep on walking, but there's a little stone in your shoe that hurts a little bit, but you're too lazy or you want to deny, and sometimes that little stone gets in between your teeth, and then it comes back, and then finally you have to open it and things come differently. And I think the first house I show you was also one which was bringing us back to the fact, like, to me, essentially today the question is not what should we do, but what can we do? And in a certain way they are related. Should we do is maybe the result of a long consideration, while what can we do is maybe the result of an immediate intuitive action. And so this is this project for the Caritas Psychiatric Clinic, which is a project based or result of a competition, in which the competition brief said clearly, listen, we don't know what to do with the building. Can you do something with it? And if you can't do something with it, then advise us to demolish it. So the alternative for what we have today over there, the alternative would have been a grass field, pelouse, nothing else. So we believed that this had to be avoided. So we fixated the building a little bit the way we found it. On the other hand, we also confirmed that further on decline would become part of the building. But nevertheless, as it is still there, and it is there today in a kind like of useless modus, on the other hand, even though it's declining, it might be able to reuse it one day in another status. But why this building is also this little stone in your shoe when you walk is because at any time, we needed to reflect on things we were not used to, we reflect on. In the first house, it was a kind of impossible budget, but the need to live. In this house, in this project, is more rather about a not existing program, what architects always need. Again, a budget of a certain smaller kind, but next, just the fact that in a certain way, you knew that you could not know exactly what to do in the frame of psychiatric clinic, but on the other hand, understanding after many talks that psychiatry has a lot to do with space, just with space. A lot of diseases, a lot of diagnosis, a lot of imaginations has to do with the understanding or the misunderstanding of space with patients in psychiatry. So we had to make space, we had to make spaces of opportunities. Glazed houses came on place, non-conditioned, but available and with a certain way of protection in between. We arrived weeks after the delivery and nothing seems to have happened there. And we understood from our client that a lot of things has been happened, even if a patient just walks 5 minutes through it. And then we found that the evening, the young patients, the teenagers being part of the clinic, smoking their G outside at the fireplace. For us as architects here, this was a challenge in understanding that space on one hand was the deepest fundament of the psychiatric clinic in a certain way, and on the other hand, we did not know what to do with the space. We just made it. And then we made it in a way also from the viewpoint towards execution, craftsmanship, that we took almost all decisions on detailing and constructions on site. And we drew the details after. It's project that turned over all those ways we were used to think into the almost opposite way. So here you see that we have been opening a floor with a basement, as that was a little bit, let's say, corrupted, but that gave us the idea or the opportunity to present a kind of small auditorium outside. The tree came in place. When we had to head for the building permit of the building, the village of Melle near to Ghent, who had to give this permit, at first did not know what to do with it because they asked themselves whether they were giving a permit for a building or for a not building, and they did not know how to deal with it, how to catalog it, because they could not interview you on energy savings and all this kind of thing. Everything was unclear for everyone. It brings me to a thing that has been said by Francis Alice, the Belgian artist living in Mexico City. And he was raised as architect at Toornik. And he wrote down something like this: sometime doing something poetic can become political, sometime doing something political can become poetic. I wish that I have written it myself, but and I'm happy with that it's Francis Alice who has written it down. And of course, he has much more right to do something or to claim something like this. But what is fascinating to me is how the word poetic and the word political, which seems to be both at the extents of what we often talk about, how they both were combined in a sentence. And in fact, that there is no relation was just a relation of the moment, the relation of the occasion that brought them together, poetic and political. If we think about the Caritas project, which was a little stone in our shoe, this is another project which was also a little stone in our shoe, and I dare with all my pretension, I dare to relate to the sentence that I just have read. It's a competition we won a couple of years ago, and of which today, and that's why I want to shift later on to some images, especially for you, Gilles, on structures. It's a building, an expo building, 66,000 square meters tall, which 3 levels. You see, like from this viewpoint, like 1 level, but each level has a average height of, let's say, 8 meters. It's a little bit different, low to above, but floors of 3 tons square meter. And this is in the city of Charleroi. That was a city which was part of the heavy economy power of Belgium back in the 60s, 50s. And this building was built to become a showroom of this metal industry, power, and so on. And this is an image from the building site. And what you see in the middle is a kind of lobby space itself, big, 12,000 square meter, that connected 2 blocks of 3 levels on the left and the right side. And you see, we are standing on the tower of the Belfort, of the townhouse, and we're looking over the landscape, and you see the sterils of coal and everything. And this project, at the end of the 70s, the building was, at the end of the 70s, the industry collapsed. And the end of the 60s, the industry collapsed. And since beginning 70s, this building was like, let's say, out of use because there was nothing to show anymore. And Charleroi changed from a, let's say, quite empowered, rich area into an area of poverty, one of those areas in Europe which are recognized for economic relief. And in that frame, European money came to it, and like 35 million euros all over to not restaurate, but to reactivate this building. If you would renovate it, you need like 4 times the money. If you would go like a pure renovation all over, you need 4 times that money, but it was not there. City of Charleroi was keen enough to understand that though there's money, they could not handle all. And so the competition focused on that middle point and said, please give it an actual architectural update and make it zero energy. And we found that quite, a typical question of today, of course. But what are you with a zero energy, heavy insulated building with a nowadays look 2020, already old when it's 2025? So we looked to this image and we said, well, maybe the image can be the proposal. And we said, well, what if we return somehow to this status of unfinished structure and we take away today some parts, but merely facades, so it becomes back an open air concrete structure. We're looking now from the other side on this model. And it becomes an open little city park. Well, little, it's not that little, but I mean, to use the word park, between the upper city, and you see on the model also here, you see the 3 levels, and you see the metro line and the ringway around Charleroi. And to reopen it as a city park that can connect the upper and the below city once again, as before, this mega block, you can see the scale of the city around. This mega block just was smashed into that city. And that's the proposal we made. And in the middle, we will copy some staircase existing and bring it even to the below level floor, which is 9 meters high. We get some escalators and everything, and the patio in the middle with the old chimneys will be open. We saved 2/3 of the money. And 2/3 of the money now we could invest in the other parts of the building to restore it technically. We even don't have any architectural ambition, except that we want to renovate electricity, take away the asbestos roof, and so on and so on. But for like 1/3, we realize a total open building at this point. And it was, if I can switch, how can I get stop share? And I now quickly go to those images for you, Gilles. We are now at the building site. And I quickly, do you see the screen now? No, share screen. Okay, here you are. Now you should, isn't it?
Perfect.
So now you are in my private image bank, so maybe some family photos might pass also, but it's not a talk about that. But here you can see a little bit. How can I move this? Yeah. Wait, now I move you out of my arrows. Yeah, here you can see a little bit where we are today. We have started stripping the building. Those are images like from Philippe Dujardin, like 2 weeks ago. Here you start seeing, we still have to open the floor here to add 2 more staircases going down. I'm going a little bit quickly because I made a mistake and I downloaded them twice. That's why you see them double, but I don't know. Well, I can do them out, but I was not prepared in that sense. But as you were showing the structures, maybe I quickly go. How can I go? Let's go slow. I quickly go and check some images with you. You see, this is, you see starting here already. I don't know if you see the arrow of my mouse.
Yes, we see it.
See the city or the lower city part on the other side already. Of course, typical Philippe Dujardin images, you see. Problem for Philippe here is that this is not a collage. This is what it is. He's got is quite nervous when he is there, because he sees what he dreams about, talking about fiction and reality. And you see those images, but I try to quickly go to the other image, but how can I get out again? Wait, I want to see photos again. Anyway, I quickly go this way, you see? This is one of the images also, which is nice to look at, I think, to understand a little bit what we are up to. Well, talking about the green was already there, eh? Okay. So here you start to see the whole, let's say, cadavre. Is this modernity has something to do with the availability of a cadaver delivered in the past and eventually available for the future? I don't know. It might be. Here we are at the edge of one of the main spaces. You see this unbelievable tall spans. And then you see there in the depth left, you see the above city, let's we call it. Anyway, I'm going to leave this screen and go back to the prepared little introduction, of which typically for architects, we take it 4 times the time foreseen. This is a work of an artist, Ante Timmerman, and it's called Mettre en Jeu. That's clear, I think. It's there to risk things. It's written on an image of a project of another architecture office, Bart de Hane Architects. And what you see on the left side is kind of pavilionesque setting of schools. In Flanders, there is almost a decade ongoing campaign of building new schools. Those are schools from the 50s that had to be replaced. It's done in the meantime by a nice project of Bart de Hane. But artists' participation is important, and Ante Timmermans, as artist, he asked if they could keep one pavilion untouched. The beautiful economy of it is that it's an art project, but it's about, again, space without function, because it is not taken in account of the program of the school as it needed to be fulfilled. It saved money. It saved money. And by saving money, space has been found. And today, well, it's I think now a couple of years, but I remember Ante Timmermans told me in the beginning that the school did not know what to do with the space. They had been fighting for every square meters on subsidies to get a taller school. And then they were given this space, which was not defined. And the only imagination they had in the beginning was something like, can we put our bikes there, or can we put there the dustbins, or what can we do it? While the artist said, no, keep it 1 year locked. You can't enter it. And then you will maybe discover another way of use. Mettre en jeu, to me, means that the other stone into the shoe. When we had to design a pavilion for a Horst Art and Music Festival, pavilions are named or known as architects. It's almost the ultimate dream to be asked to design a pavilion. As pavilions, as typology, also have to deal with that dream, with that fiction, with a presentation of a better world or a better material technique, the representation of a better society, and so on. At that time, I think after Caritas and all this idea of making architecture and its materialization and its detail was one major stone in the shoe. Like, what the hell do we do with all those architectural materializations? And this pavilion is based, it's concrete, that's maybe a pity, one could say nowadays understanding, but it's form casted with planks which were on site of a previous little hut which was there. And on the other hand, it's stacked stone, but not made as masonry. We just poured concrete in between. And the roof is armature is too less, so it pans a little bit and the water just falls down. And it has maybe in all its ways kind of like opposite perception. It is not exactly what we often are looking for in detailing in architecture. Lieven de Kouter, philosopher, he called it a non-homage to Mies van der Rohe. I never saw it in it, but he said the classic order of things brought back in a kind of, I thought it was too much what he was saying, but then afterwards, he told me also he didn't like the project at all. Huh? And that was a nice point.
I hate to interrupt, but if we want to have one question left.
We only have 1 hour? Okay, I thought we had 2 hours.
Yes, we have only 1 hour. Otherwise, you have to come into...
No, sorry, but I thought we had 2 hours. So stupid.
No. We have 1 hour.
I stopped with this. San Gotardo, 1 August day, nothing special when you go over it. Another August day a year before. When I say about those two images, what architecture eventually could do, creating a circumstance in which things that have nothing to do with each other all of a sudden have something to do with each other. You haven't seen the electricity pile, nor the traffic sign, nor the horse, and so on and so on. But by the condition of humidity and the gray, all of a sudden they mean something one to the other. They are at least a constellation, a composition, a definition of space. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now you give me really a hard time, but it was a pleasure to hear and to see you. And I think the audience will have has had the same.
I thought we had 2 hours to speak. Sorry.
We send you the program next time earlier. No, it's okay. So we.
No. It's my misunderstanding. I've been reading it, but I don't know how come. Sorry.
It's no problem. Wait, we. You started already to talk to Gilles. I wonder how the Gilles' lecture would have been if you would have started. Maybe suddenly you would have also had some green projects, maybe. Okay, so I understand that definitely there is an understanding of redefining modernism. On the one hand, we have this rusty machine, which could be functioning again and could be set or put together again, but it's rusty. Otherwise, it would be a pain. And on the other hand, we have, now I come with the modernity, can talk about a lot of things. We have the glass house, which is protected within the historic shelter twice. And, but I think it's astonishing how there is even Jan, maybe, or your work comes from clearing existing structures, disassembling, clearing existing structures, and Gilles, who stops in the middle of his work and creates in both time spatial openness and a great belief or big belief into material and structure in both projects. And the question is it, it's a rhetoric question, is that just symbolic? Or is it, in the end, coming out of this, what you said it in other words, but Jan said, it's not about what we should do, but what we can do. And so if we have the big guys, Jan mentioned it in the afternoon, who will talk probably about what we should do, it's interesting to hear an answer about the question of reality or realism. And I wonder, what does that mean? Because we don't have a lot of time for, you can also answer to the architectural part of this question, but what does it mean for the problem of the large number of the city? You showed, and of course, with our setting, we also wanted to talk about architecture. But what about the context and about the larger scheme? Who wants to answer? Of course, we had a huge structure in the end, this former industrial building. And I understand, well, could they even relate to the afternoon? Built on the already built, building on the built. I mean, that's, especially with you, Jan, came very strongly. And in your, Gilles, in your case, it's, well, the ruin is also an arc. And in the end, you also showed an arc. And, you know, where we can find shelter. And that's the leftover of architecture. And there's a difference between you two, that I think your vocabulary is more restrained, Gilles, and Jan is engaging, of course, the existing structures. So as long as you have to answer now.
Ingemar, I think Gilles is talking to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm now.
Okay. I take it. I think we, of course, look a lot at Jan's projects. They're part of our culture now, and it's coming from another way. It's coming from the existing, and you there when you see the pictures, you already. Thank you for the pictures of the structure, because you really get what almost the thing that we're searching for, coming really from the opposite, from, you know, the field of architecture in France. And we're not doing the coolest project. We're dealing with a really tough market in France and private clients, and we've been working mostly with the public. And in moments when
Gilles, your projects are cooler.
Thank you. But moments and clients that want the normal stuff, and they don't even have the money for the normal stuff. So we, when Jan's saying, what can we do? The question, what can we do or could we do? I totally agree. It's not. It's pretty much linked to circumstances, and I guess we would do something different in a different context. We're just trying to, for instance, the reason why we do concrete is mainly because this is the cheapest material in France, and nobody knows how to deal with metal. And I mean, it's a pity, but we're trying to do our best with the structure that the Saclay building, as much as the Clichy building, they're very normal concrete. We couldn't do better. So we're trying to deal with conditions of construction that correspond to those of the very large companies in France. There are about 5 that dominate the whole country, and we sort of getting to know what they're able to do, and they cannot do much, really. And so we said, let's deal with that.
I'd like to add 2 things quickly before you kick me out of the show, but it's my own fault, of course, sorry. Or I share the fault with Gilles, because Gilles, you were not too fast either. The thing is, what I distinguish today in many talks right now, I try to distinguish the word moment and the word momentum. The word momentum is related to the word should. That it means that we of course, should not forget to reflect in a slower and wider view onto the things. So we could understand, especially the momentum of today, since a couple of years, though it's nothing news, we are in this total climate talk debate, which never has been so profound also into architecture. And then comes this stupid thing of the last 3 months we were all stuck in. I mean, it's also at the school, what should we do, they asked. And I said, yeah, we should think about what we should do, but please, let's not forget also the moment now, what can we do right now? And I think this is, to me, in the whole interest is interesting in where we are with as architects in participating in society, but society in larger scale. We have to do something immediately now. What can we do now? And then we have to, by evening, go home and reflect on what should we do. The moment and the momentum, I think we have to clear out that very, 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 it's very important to me when we talk about the things which are so urgently now right in our face, is that we have to have a kind of immediate action, but of course a kind of profound reflection at the same time. And I think that this is not anymore a matter of academic versus practice, but it is a matter of both at the same time, at the same place. This is also the way we teach right now, all of us, I think, the way we take our practice into the teaching and we take the reflection out of the research into the practice. It's sometimes a flu line, let's say. Secondly, what I like, Gilles, if you show those images of those structures, of which you also can say that you can love that building when it was finished. You don't have to emphasize that you loved it more before, because you shouldn't. But the interesting thing, if we could be able, like in San Cotardo, to have those two images next to each other, one of yours and then one of Charleroi. And that's, I think, the basic, very interesting point. Is architecture the one that can deliver those structures to be able to live those structures differently, the word of should, in any future coming? So I would say it's not a matter of ruin, or it's not a matter of structure, but it's a matter of, let's say, creating an alter ego of life as it should move on. And the alter ego might be a structure, as we are architects. We are not artists, we are not doctors, we are not whatever. I would like, if we could constitute that image, one of your building there and one of Charleroi next to each other, and say, like, that's maybe the frame we are right now. And what shall we do with it today and tomorrow? And what shall we do with it next time? Next time we talk, Ingemar.
Yes, we go on with this talk, I hope, in physical space. I'm very sorry that we don't have more time, but inviting architects means to talk about architecture, and I think you had some strong words and sentences. We will think about that and go on thinking about it. And also in this final round, but we have also, as you made it in the end now, we have your buildings in front of us, and I think this is the most important. And I hope now that we can travel again, that we will go and watch them and feel the moment of architecture. So thank you very much for your proposals, your theses, and I hope we can go working on it. It's an ongoing project, and I hope we see each other soon again. Okay. Good luck with your work and your life.
Good luck with your talks, I would say. But this was not the most successful of the day, I guess.
It was great having you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Goodbye.